We are not alone. You are watching Contact TV with your hosts, Leslie Mitchell-Clark
and Wes Roberts,
exploring ufology, metaphysics, and beyond with the world's foremost experts.
Oh, where? You said it's right outside the elevator. You said it is. So
it's wild.
Stuff.
You know, Grant, there's as Wes. Oh, Wes, go right ahead.
No, you go ahead. I have a couple of things for Grant.
Okay, I was just going to actually, applies to both Wes and myself, but, you know, in a lot of the research that I've done with past life regressions and interlife regressions, the presence of what we would call ETs in our so-called afterlife is abundant. Yeah. Not only are they involved in councils, but they're just walking around. They can be family members. So if we do have a soul group, per se, it's an awfully large soul group. And we are, you know, this as you said, this idea of separation is an idea, and it's a wrong idea. So Wes, go right ahead.
Just speaking to all this because it is all about spirit. I 100% agree with that. I noticed after my sessions with Leslie, communication with those that I call my guides, not, commonly known as guides, spirit guides, increased. And I could not get my questions to them fast enough because they'd be answering me before I finished the questions. And people have said to me, how do you know this is legit and you're not making it up? I said, I can't form the full question. I can't even think the full question before they're giving me the answer at high speed. And so I wanted to ask you, Grant, because I think the three of us feel the same way. Like in my second book, I talked about why me. And so you've talked about in this book being pulled down into these things, never pursuing them on your own, but it's like, come, you're wanted in this scenario, or you wanted to work with these people. So can you address that question? Why you?
Yeah, I was a big Michael Newton fan. I had 4 big experiences in my life. One of them was seeing Dr. Michael Newton lecture at one of the UFO conferences.
Oh, I wish I had.
It was the same thing. I didn't want to go in the lecture. It was like, this isn't UFOs he's talking about. And I thought, wow, whatever, And I went in there, and for 2 days, I was just dazed. I was just like, whoa, it's like it's all made sense. And it was like, so that's always the way I've looked at it, is that we come in, like people always want to believe in the random world. And one of the downloads I got was where they said these things where, is it consciousness or is it nuts and bolts? Is it random or is it pattern? And we not only is what you've got wrong, it's exactly the opposite of what you think it is. So I've always had this impression that I'm part of this, dragged into it. And when you get the synchronicities and this kind of stuff, that means you're on the right path. And when everything goes quiet, then you're sort of going in the opposite direction. But yeah, it's the idea that everything is going to end up being not as physical as we think it is, that we've sort of made these assumptions about the physical universe, and that even the idea, the things that sort of blew me away with people on board the ship is another word, the crossover with the spiritual thing was, you tell 40% of all people who experiencers say at one point during their experience they knew the answer to everything in the universe. 31% of people who've had near-death experiences say at one point during their experience they knew the answer to everything in the universe. So if I were to say, I asked some of these people, I'd say, well, how do you know you knew everything? How do you know there wasn't something number 6, 7, 8 on the far side of the universe they forgot to tell you about? And it's what Les had just said. It was like you say, when my downloads happened, it was like, I'm not sure, I just know. And that was one of the things they said to me, belief and knowing. The experiencers are the ones that know. They're the ones, that's the only way you can know. You can't know by listening to somebody else. You have the experience, I don't know how I know it. I just know for a fact. And when I had my downloads, there was no doubt, this is how it works. I don't care what anybody says. It comes with that absolute sense of certainty. And that's hard to explain to people. So when you get this thing, if that's true, that when you take on board the ship and you got dead relatives there and your dead dog is there, and you know the answer to everything in the universe, then that indicates that whoever it is, the Greys or wherever, they have the answer to everything in the universe as well, because they've given you access to it. And when you go back, you say, I'm gonna remember this, and they go, no, you're not gonna remember this. And it's like a dream. As they're going back, all they can remember is at one point they knew everything in the universe. Even I just had an interview with Nick Cook, the guy with Hunt for Zero Point, the famous British book, and he tells the story with his wife. And he said, it's the same thing as what you described. He said, I was with my wife, and her mother was dying, and she was sitting by the bed, and she was holding her mother's hand. And then she said, suddenly her mother died, and the wife let go of her hand and got up and said, everything is good. Everything is okay. And he goes, what are you talking about? Your mother just died. And she said, everything is good. Everything's good. And she walked, and then later he said to you, said, well, why'd you say that? Like, well, what was going on? She said, I was in a field of absolute bliss, unconditional love, and I knew the answer to everything in the universe. And that's the whole thing. So you have these things that cross over, and that gives the idea that everything is already there, and that we're going in, we're playing these roles, and we sort of think that we're going to get these inventions, even, you know, this idea that if you can get in the field, you can get everything. And if the beings have it, then they're not here to check our DNA or whatever people think they're doing, or studying the plants, whatever. They've got the answer to everything. They're doing something different. And more and more I look at it, it more looks spiritual, and yet everything looks spiritual. It's all, if Newton is right, it's all a big play. We come in to do things, we came in to learn stuff, and then when you leave, you don't get to blame anybody. The separation ends, and they say, how did it work out? Because you're the one that planned it. You can't say, oh, my mother-in-law, you know, I would have done something, but I was born in Winnipeg and it's so cold here. I would have done something. And, you know, the government did this to me, and that, and it's the whole psychological thing that, and unless you psychologically take responsibility for it, whether you did it or not, you're a victim, and that's what they're trying to move us.
I love that. I love that, Grant. And I this is one thing I'm always saying in concurrence with you after past life regressions. The most beautiful thing about the process is it removes blame.
Yeah.
We make our own decisions. Sometimes they're very difficult decisions, but we choose our learning experiences. We come in family groups. We are not victims, we are playwrights.
That's right. And that even in psychology, I think that's a basic tenet in psychology.
It is.
Until the person
Take
takes
responsibility.
You can't help them. You've got to, whether you're responsible for it or not, as long as you're a victim, and that's what we're doing, is we've taught people to be victims and to blame others. And I'm sure that if the panel is there and you start talking about this stuff, they're going to time out. This is not going to, and that's what I say. So in the end, the whole thing is spiritual, because it means that I came into the world, and I probably, if I came into the world for the 87th time or whatever, I probably planned to do something. And when I leave, they're going to ask that one question that Newton says. They ask you one question: how did it work out? And everybody says the same thing: I could have done better. I forgot to do this. I was going to do this. And the idea is that all I have to worry about is, why did I come into the world? What am I supposed to be doing? And am I doing it? And it really doesn't matter what anybody else is doing, because I'm not going to be able to bring them up when I get on the other side. Everybody lives their own life, and everybody's on their own path, and they're learning their own things. And I got to worry about why am I supposed to be here? And that's when you talk to experiences. You probably have the same thing, where you ask an experiencer, do you think you're on a mission? And they'll go, yeah, I don't know what it is, but yeah, I think so. Or they'll say, yeah, I know what it is. And they start telling you. And it's that mission thing that they feel drawn, that they're that this is bigger than themselves.
They have made agreements. Wes made an agreement. He made more than one agreement. He made an adolescent agreement and an adult agreement. So it seems that these participations, even if they involve hybrid programs or programs, human and ET programs, there's a lot of that going on too, and it isn't necessarily all evil or all bad. You know, as you say, I think you manifest what's in your head to a large degree, but absolutely, the taking of responsibility is essential as human beings. It's the way we grow. And you know, if you're languishing in victimhood, then my God, you know, you're Kim Kardashian. What the beep? You know.
And that's basically the bottom line to the whole thing, that we are creating our own story, and it's a play. We don't have to really get too upset about it, because you know, we've got guidance, and that's where I've used this new expression now. I say, just the world of UFOs and the paranormal, where every day is the Super Bowl. That you start looking at this stuff and you realize, like, wow, you know, I could have been an untouchable in the streets of Calcutta and spend my days in junk looking for something valuable enough to sell for food for tomorrow. I didn't get that. I got to play in this game, the biggest story of all time. So you understand what's going on. And so the onus, almost like the biblical thing, too much is given, much is expected. That you and I can't say, well, I didn't know. I mean, somebody who's on the street doesn't know, but you and I knew. You knew better. You knew what the answer was, and you didn't do anything. So to me, it's a great responsibility, but it's a great opportunity in terms of understanding. Or we do the thing where, you know, we sort of we don't have compassion. I've always heard this thing with the compassion and the gratitude, the meditations, and I do these every day now religiously. And it's the idea that we want, the victim is so easy to do. So I tell people, like, you've got 330 billion cells die in your human body every day. And you say death is bad. Well, you got 330 billion cells that basically commit suicide every day so that new cells can come in. And are we worried about that? Do we say thank you and have compassion for the cells that die in our body every day? It's like, no, who cares? It's like when the ego cell, it's like, oh my God, the ego is going to die. It's like, and then we start looking for healers and we're trying to save ourselves. And that's the whole thing, is we got to realize we're part of a process, and that everything dies, that life is life, death, life, death, life. And that's how it evolves. And that we plan, if we plan the good things, we're going to plan the bad things. That, you know, even the near-death experience thing, where you have 37% of all experiencers claim they've had a near-death experience. And I'm going, do you think this is really random, that the person actually was an abductee and then they also had a near-death experience? And most of them have had two.
It's so common.
Realizing this is all planned. I plan to learn something from the abduction experience. I plan to learn something in the near-death experience. And it's all about, what am I here? Why would I do this? Why would I put this rock in my path? What, you know, what am I supposed to learn from this? And if you take that responsibility, even if it's not your fault, even if you didn't do it, if you take responsibility and say, well, maybe I did it for this reason, then at least you're not a victim and you can deal with the problem.
Indeed.
Well, oh, sorry. I was going to say, Grant, we're remembering, the three of us do that. We remember what we're capable of and what spirit's capable of. And so I always say to people, my journey here is that I was fortunate enough to remember agreements I made, and I'm acting on them.
And I believe that I'm here in a large part to relieve fear. To open people's minds into the acceptance of who they are and to alleviate fear. That's my big enemy. That's what I try to do every day, and not just on the metaphysical level, but on every level. Fear is the killer. And most people who are experiencers are highly sensitive people. They may have different levels of education. In fact, they always do. They may come from different cultures, but the great commonality is they're able to communicate telepathically really well, even though they may not realize it themselves. So we came in with a toolkit. I also believe that we made certain genetic selections for you know, when Wes was coming in, we did a fascinating interlife regression with Wes, but I know that he took certain qualities. He was born maybe into a more of a chaotic home, as was I, then, you know, but I have never, ever, ever heard him say, you know, poor me. It's all about, all of this stuff led to my, you know, whatever I'm doing now. And nobody told me I couldn't do stuff. You know, that's
that is so true. And working through fear, thanks to you, any fear I had associated with these experiences is almost totally gone. Now it's like, what's next?
Things are getting.
Understand. The more people have regressions and deal with it, the less the fear is, and then they understand that this is an opportunity where people want to sort of lock onto the fear and play the victim role, where, you know, everybody's having their experiences, and we have something to offer, that we chose this kind of stuff. If we believe that it's random, we're in a lot of trouble. And so, and everybody's got the fear thing. It starts with fear. That's why I make that joke.
Oh boy,
it
does.
Start with fear, like Chris Bledsoe sat in a chair for 9 months and prayed to God for him to take him out of the world and stuff like that. And now look at him. He's doing movies and he's got books, and you can't shut the guy up. And he's like, you know, the Messiah. And people turn into these things. They realize that they've got something significant to offer to the world, and everybody's got it. But we have to realize, you know, that idea of reincarnation, that changes everything. If we realize that we're coming in numerous times, we're not coming in for some random accident, that we may have something to do, and we should,
Indeed.
yeah.
And just imagine that if it hadn't been thrown out at the Council of Nicaea, reincarnation would have remained a doctrine of the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And many things would be very different.
Yeah.
You know, so we absolutely are blessed to be able to have the awareness that we do. My worries and concerns, I guess, are about the polarization of narrow belief systems that
Yeah.
cause oppression and sadness and violence, and you know, that's one of our big problems today. And I don't know how the ETs can advise us, but I think they must. ETs who are a little bit farther down the road than we are,
Yeah.
and who have already been through their nuclear age and their technological problems, they must have had divergent points of view and uneven uneven development, I suppose, is what you could say. We have a wide spectrum of development in our world, intellectually, spiritually. I don't know how to get the extremes together, or
Yeah.
if we can, or if anyone ever has.
The way I look at that, I'm actually going to give a lecture at the MUFON conference about this, and that's the idea where I say that all that is considered to be evil in the modern world is created by one thing and one thing only: the mistaken belief in separation. And that's the idea. If
Yes.
you realize that you are a part of the whole thing, that was Edgar Mitchell's thing when he looked at the
Mhm.
world from outer space, and you realize there's no blue states, there's no red states, there's no latitude, there's no longitude, there's no Greenwich Mean Time, there's no borders, there's nothing. It's just a live planet. And realized it was all this one thing. And we've been taught so much into the competition. It's almost like a football game. And I point out to people, like, who wins the Super Bowl? It's not the one that has the best players. It's the one where everybody's in the huddle and everybody's doing exactly what they're supposed to do, and everybody's going to do their assignment. And if you get into the huddle and some guy says, "Oh, I'm not going to block. Heck with that. I'm going for a pass," and then that's the end of the game. The Super Bowl's over and you lose. And that's, I think, the message that you hear, and I've got it numerous times, where if you've interviewed Brett Oldham, where he talks to the gray, and he's hated the grays, and he said to the tall gray, he says, "Hey, okay, so tell me, what's your concept of God?" And the tall gray said, "We are one with the one who is all." And Brett said, "I was so shocked I had to sit down." Or they say, "We are you, you are us, we are one."
Yeah.
The oneness message is the number one message that they're trying to get across. You are all one thing. Or Reagan, who supposedly had an experience where he had an encounter with an ET. That was with the story that Lucille Ball told, and the story that he said how the world would unite if we were faced with a threat from an alien. We'd all realize we're just God's children. We're all together. And that's that oneness thing. If you realize that you are part, and you're not going to cut your own arm off, but if you realize that you're separate, and that separation exists, then I can see all this guy's stuff, because he's not me. It's the same thing as the idea of the 330 billion cells. It's about me. It's not about who's dying out there. I don't care who's dying, how many people are starving to death. I'm only worried about myself. And when you realize that you are part of the whole thing and that we're all evolving together, then that's when things move. And I think that's the number one message that the beings are putting across, is this oneness message, that it's oneness or separate. And that was the message I got when I got this download thing, this oneness separation thing, where if it's all one thing, then it's one world. But if it's all separate, everything changes, all the rules change, and that's what we're doing. We're basically fighting each other. We've turned it into a giant football game, and I'm the good guy, your team's bad, the referee's pulling for you, it's unfair, you get all the good calls and whatever, and that's what it turns down to, this thing about who's going to win the game, and that's not what it's about. It's about realizing that we're all evolving as one thing, and then you feel better when you make those moves to oneness, and you realize that you feel like you've actually done something rather than stealing somebody's stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We get impressions, though, Grant, all the time, right? That don't speak to separateness. You know, when you think of a loved one, you got a sense that they're in trouble. That proves the connection. And a lot of things like that prove the connection every day when we think of someone and they pick up the thoughts. You don't connect the dots, but it proves the connectivity between us.
Yes, it's all quantum entanglement. It's all,
Remove-
and we
Yeah.
can, if in a certain point of meditation or whatever our discipline is, we can access the Akasha. We can go into the big library,
Yeah.
of impulses where data is stored and information is stored. We are not less than, and I'm really, this is another message. Removal of fear. We need to stop thinking of ourselves as less than.
Yeah.
We are not. We are completely capable of anything that any of the ETs are demonstrating. In fact, we're not that far off, and high-tech stuff that is unbelievable is already going on in the secret space program. We are one with all beings. We can be proud of who we are. We're a unique hybrid being, possibly brought about by the Anunnaki, or who knows, but we are souls, and we are one. And that's the reality. That is the big truth.
Yeah. And as the experiencer community, we have to lead the way because we've got the message. It's not like, we don't know. We know the message, and that's what you got to put across. And I think we're moving from left brain to right brain. And I don't
Mhm.
get upset. Is the left brain is the male ego. It's the, because when you do the psychedelics and stuff like that, or meditation, the default mode network, that left side shuts down. And
Yeah.
that's when you make the connection to the world. So we're moving from the ego, me versus you, urinating contest, to the right brain, to the female brain that says we're all family. We should all work together, and this nurturing thing with the right brain. That's what Roger Lear said when they asked him, when he did the 17 alien implants, took them out. They said, "What's common between all UFO experiences?" And he said, "They're all right-brained. They're all right-brained, and there's tons of them in Hollywood." And that's this idea.
Did he say that? Did he say that actually?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
That they're all right-brained, and there's tons of them in Hollywood. And the other thing he said was all implants are on the left side of the body. Now, I'm not
Mhm.
sure if that's true, but a lot of the implants are on the left side. So I always made the thing where if the implant is on the left side of the body, then they're not interested in your left brain. They're not interested in the male brain, because the left side of the body is run by the right brain. They're interested in your right brain. They're interested in the female brain, which is the one that connects to the universes. And that's the whole idea behind whether it's telepathy or meditation or whatever it is I did the contact modality book, and it talked about the way you get into the field is you've got to shut down the left brain. You got to shut down the noise. The left brain creates the noise. This little voice that says, "Oh, this is like garbage. Don't believe this." And it's just chattering away. And once you can people say you're silencing the mind. You're not. You're silencing the left brain, and then the right brain can tap in and you can pick up the message. Or you talked about this thing where you have a traumatic childhood. We found numerous times that it was trauma. People say trauma, I don't want any trauma. And you find out people who have their very abusive child. There was one in Toronto. She was a medium in Toronto. And I remember it was with Sid Goldberg. And then I was telling him this. He said, "No, it's not true." I said, "Yeah, it's true." And then you may even know her. OC came. OC says, I'm a medium, and I talk to dead people, all sorts of stuff. And I said, "Hey, OC, ask you a question. How was your childhood?" She said, "Absolutely terrible. She tell us all this stuff." I said, "Sid, told you, Sid." And there was like this idea where the trauma rips the filter. And
Yeah.
so you get these very.
I remember that gal. I tried to induct her once. Goldberg had me over to his place. I remember that. You were there too, Wes. OC. Remember that girl?
Yeah.
You were there.
Yep.
Yeah, I recall that.
Yep.
I recall that completely. Remember, Grant, what Dolores Cannon calls the left-sided brain? Mr. Stupid.
Mr. Stupid, yeah, it's true. And people don't like that. I remember I was even at a conference one time, and one of the big remote viewers was, I brought this up. And I said that you find this all the time. There's some trauma or a near-death experience, or like an abduction event where the person has this traumatic abduction event. Suddenly they're psychic and they're healing people, like Chris Bledsoe, all these experiences or whatever. And he said, "No, I don't think that's true." And then I said, "No, I think it's trme." And then they went to his top remote viewer, and she said, "Oh, it might be true. I had a near-death experience." And I go, "Thank you." and so we want to avoid the damage, but we got to realize that sometimes it's that trauma event that we planned on in order to open it up. Or it's like I say with the beings, like you hear these stories with the beings where the guy wakes up and he's like, "What's the chances you're going to wake up and this being is looking at you?" And it's like, "Leslie, wake up. wake up. And then you go, oh my God. And then they go, put your hand on your head and say, go back to sleep. And then you ask the people, what do you do? Oh, I pulled the covers over my head and went back to sleep. And I said, there was a being in the room and you put your covers over your head and went back to sleep. And it's almost like they're getting you to dissociate. It's like this fear. And then, okay, they're ready to go. Let's go and float them to the wall. You got their astral body. And this starts to explain, how can you go through walls? How can you go through windows? Because maybe it's not your physical body. Maybe they're pulling the astral body out.
Yeah.
There's good methods of doing this.
Yes.
And you hear over and over, especially when you get Betty Andreasen, who's done like 6 books and, you know, had all these experiences. And she basically said, or the guy who's the head of MUFON for Japan is one of the sky pilots. And I interviewed him, and he was an expert on meditation in Washington.
Oh, we had that guy on our show. Remember, Wes, the head of MUFON in Tokyo?
Yeah, and he said it was all every single one was out of body experience. That's how he does it. And he stopped doing it. But that's what you start to see. And then you start asking people, like, have you ever had an out of body experience? Ron Johnson, he said, oh, like 3 dozen. It's like, and then you go, well, there's something to this. This is not a coincidence that this near-death experience thing, especially when people start describing 360-degree vision, then you're going like, this is the same thing as out of body experience. Are they having an abduction experience or an out of body experience?
Yeah.
And so we're the ones that lead the way. I think we have the information that people need, and it's up to us to put it out there. And I think we are changing the world, and you see it starting to shift. I mean, people are starting to realize that the consciousness is part of, remember 10 years ago, people almost thrown out of the UFO community. I was ostracized by saying that I had this consciousness download. And it was like, oh,
I remember. Yeah.
And now even people who don't understand consciousness use it because they know it's a buzzword. You got to talk about consciousness, even though they don't know what they're talking about. So we are making some headway, and we're starting to realize that we're the ones, almost like the expression, we're the ones we've been waiting for. We're waiting for someone else to come save us. And no, we're the ones that are supposed to be out there, and we're the ones that we're waiting for, that we had this mission. And then when you open yourself up to the mission and say, lead me where I need to go, and you have soul guides like Wes, and they will lead you, and it's to stop that resistance. That once the resistance, the synchronicities start coming, and you open yourself up. Even I asked Gary Nolan, if you've had him on your show, his experience, and I said to him, Gary, tell me the story about, first I said the 5%. I'm interested in the 5%. I'm not interested in 95%. I know I'm interested in 5% anomalies. That's where the discoveries are. And then I said, and tell me the one about, I don't know how it works, but I know how to make it work. And that's the same thing. How do you shut down the left brain? So he said, I sit there and I build a model in my head. And he's got all these patents and companies and stuff. He said, I build a model in my head like an FBI thing. And I've got these different things, and I put strings to connect the things. And he said, I look at it and I study it all, whatever, all the different components or whatever, and how they connect to each other. And he said, and I completely forget about it. And he said, within a couple of days, the idea pops into my head. Oh, wow. So he said, I don't know how it works, but I know how to make it work. And that's where we're leading the way in terms of understanding this fact that all the information is there in the field. And we're sort of on the leading edge of being able to access and get the information. And in the end, it comes down to a spiritual experience. It's all going to be spiritual because there is no physical world. You break it all down in the physical world, it all breaks down to energy and consciousness. And how does the electron know where to go in the hydrogen atom for 13 billion years? It's all under control, and we're part of that process. And we got to figure out what is our process and what are we supposed to be doing. I think that's all we have to worry about.
I think, Grant, that talking about downloads is real important. I've interjected it into conversations with other friends, and they get it. And I said, this is not just an experiencer thing. This is not just an abductee thing. Downloads, a lot of people are getting downloads. They don't know what they are. And it's just like flash. And, I'll be saying to them, well, unpack it if possible.
Yeah. And then that's that people, when people start to realize that there is that component, or that, I had the percentage in the one book. It was like 37% happen in showers, and it's these different events that get these things where you're in there. Or when I do meditation, I always have it sort of upsets me. Now I let them go because I can feel it coming into my mind, and I can make it go back like it's like a dream, and I'm not willing. And what happens is I'll do a meditation. I'll say, oh, I'm just gonna relax. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm just gonna relax and just sit there. And that's like 15 seconds in, and it's like this idea comes to my head, and you go, are you kidding me? I just sat down. Come on, you think I could write this down? Or the one song guy said, he was in Los Angeles. The woman that wrote Eat, Pray, Love. It was on the New York bestseller list for 5
Oh,
years or whatever. She tells the
yeah.
story how she got the inspiration. She said it was the worst book she'd ever written, and she just couldn't. She had writer's block, and she's sitting there, and then she says to remember this songwriter. I can't remember his name was, but he was driving down the LA freeway, and he said all of a sudden this song came into his head. And he goes, "Does that look like I can write this down right now?" He said, "If you want to be able to do this song, come back when I can write it down. Otherwise, go bug Leonard Cohen." And she said, "I remember this song." She said, "I remember this story." So she said, "I thought I'll give it a try." So she says, "Okay, I'm showing up here. I just want to let you know. I mean, you can help me if you want." She's looking in the corner. "Yeah, I can help you if you want, but I just want to let you know I showed up for the job." And then that book turned out to be 5 years on the bestseller list. And so I wrote all these stories. Just bizarre how this thing works. And we're starting to learn it. And that's the thing where I said to Kay Randall May, "Does the government understand this?" And she said, "Yes, they do." And it's a good thing, but it's a scary thing, because that's what I say they did at Skinwalker Ranch. When they went to Skinwalker Ranch, as Jacques Vallée said, there was no UFOs at Skinwalker Ranch. That was the last thing that was going on there. It was all this weird stuff about how do you put things inside trailer, how do you make stuff disappear and reappear and all this kind of stuff. It's just paranormal. And that's the thing is, if you've got the right guys that control that technology, but if you've got people who want to use it for devious purposes, for their own benefit or their ego or whatever, I mean, that's pretty powerful stuff. When you see what the beings have got. And that's where they sort of say, like this thing with the balloons, where they said, "Oh, they're shooting a balloon." I said, "Nah, they ain't shooting any UFOs down. Let me guarantee you, they're not shooting this stuff down. That this stuff is so far advanced, and the stuff that they're dropping." Even Bigelow said when they asked him about, "Oh, is there crashes in other countries?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I think there's one in China, there's one in Russia, there's one in South America, there's one in Central America. I think they're seeding them." And that's an expression where I asked Jacques Vallée about that. He said, "Jacques, it's kind of strange, they come all the way through the galaxy and they come here, and then little pieces start falling off the flying saucer, and then they crash." And he said, and I said, "Doesn't it look more like they're gifting the stuff, that they're dropping the stuff first?" And he said, "Well, I think I'm kind of the one that came up with the idea." And I go, and that's this Tyler D came up with the same thing. He said, when Diane Pasulka said, when they went to the gifting field, when he took them to where these recovered metals were, he took Pasulka there and Diane and Gary Nolan. When they went there, she said, "We got there and we took off the blindfolds." And she said there was these altars around, and then he started praying. And it was a government site, and they started praying, and they built an altar before they went on the site. And this is the whole idea. It was a gifting field, to have respect for the fact that this was given to us. And this is this idea that we're being given this technology by this entity, that they aren't crashing, especially the stuff with the little pieces falling off. I'm going, come on, the little pieces start falling off, and they're always this size, they're not big pieces, they're just like this, And the people get to go, "Oh, we're going to build a flying saucer out of this." And it's like, no, they just want you to go, "Something's going on here. Like, what's going on here?" And the more puzzled you get, the more you realize this 5% anomaly thing, that there's 5% of the world we can't figure out. And when you figure that out, then you're going to make new inventions. And that's where we're missing. And plus the separation thing, the idea that we think that we're separate from everybody else. Those are the two main things. But the technology would be scary if they get it, because they definitely are working on it. They're trying to get, and that's why they're doing the MK Ultra. That's why they're doing all this kind of stuff, because they're trying to figure out how does the mind work? How can you control someone's mind? And that's scary stuff if they get a hold of that.
Oh, they've done some absolute shit stuff to human beings in researching, so-called mind control, for sure. But Grant, I think also in conjunction with these bits of craft and the more physicalization that is going on, I also think that there are going to be answers that will be discovered in archaeological sites.
Yeah.
I mean, we are finding items that are 65,000 years old that no one can really figure out what they are. There's a thing that looks like the foot of a spacecraft that was found in a layer of Earth that is closer to 650,000 years old. So, I mean, I think in addition to what we see, I think we are going to begin to move out of our global amnesia.
Yeah.
I think that is part of the process, remembering who we are.
Yeah.
And why we wanted to have you back again.
Yes.
Yeah. We are the leaders, and we've gotten some, we got a good break in 2017 when the New York Times did that articles, because that sort of opens up now where we can talk it up. People aren't going to look at you sideways or whatever, where people are starting to understand. They're starting to ask the question we have is how much knowledge do we have? And from what I've learned that they understand this thing where you can take a psychic and you can get material out of them, you can get them in the field and get inventions out of them and stuff like that. And that hopefully you and I stay public in the forefront, because if they're allowed to work in the shadows and get this material, then there can be some problems.
Well, it's a grassroots movement now, isn't it? I think there's been incredible frustration with any ETs trying to work, up front with the government, Valiant Thor, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's been a total bust because of, again, fear. So I don't expect any of these big what should I say, these big illuminations to happen as a result of what's going on in the secret space program. I think this is for the people. This is where it's happening.
Yeah, if we can get it there, because that's like Chris Bledsoe mentioned that, where he has all these people around him, and that's when he said to the one guy, he said, "So what do you guys all do on my property?" There's all these military and intelligence people, and so why are you here? Like my family's all upset about this, and so what's going on? And the guy said, well, he says, it appears that you're in contact with them. And so looks like they like you. They don't like us. They're not talking to us. So we come here to see what they're telling you. I said, that's what the guy said to you? And I said, yeah. And I said to him, did they ever ask you how to fly a craft? And he said, oh yeah. He said, he took me to a US Air Force general and I explained to him how it worked, how he flew the craft. And that's the thing, is so they're watching us all the time.
Yeah.
And that's because that we're the ones with the answers. Yeah, I say over and over again, you cannot solve anything by looking at lights in the sky. That is a total waste of time.
Yeah.
Especially if they're morphing. If they can change whatever shape they want and color and whatever, and different lights every time, whatever, it's a total waste of time. It's not until you talk to the people who are talking to the intelligence that you're going to learn something. And that's you and I and Wes. That's where it's at, is they're watching us.
Yeah.
They're trying to figure out what we've got. We're the ones with the answers. We're the ones that they're dealing as close as you can to it. You cannot from the vantage point. You got to talk to people who've had the experience. It's the old idea of knowing and believing. The people who are outside, who say, oh, that's anecdotal story, I'm not going to believe that, it's just anecdotal. They're the believers. The people who have had the experience, that's knowing. That's the only way, and Wes can confirm this with me, that that's the only way you can know. I know what happened. It's not a belief. It happened to me. I know what happened. And that's the difference. The people on the outside who are criticizing you, they're the ones with the believers. They're the ones that have to rely on some scientific thing they discovered in MIT or whatever. And that's the problem that we're going to have. As I say, it's not going to be the religious people that are going to be upset when this thing all unravels. It's going to be scientific people, because it's going to be suddenly some guy went to MIT and spent $50,000 a year for tuition, and he went, what? That was all wrong? It was all garbage? It's like, oh, I invested all that money. And because we're the ones that have it. And I absolutely maintain you've got to listen to the experiencers, and I'll fight every day for the experiencer. I don't care whether you believe them or not, just listen. And you start seeing these weird patterns of 360-degree vision. The craft is bigger on the inside. These bizarre things of, spirit world and dead people and everybody knowing everything and all these things. And it confirms that this is actually a real phenomena, and it has very important ramifications for how does the world actually work, which is where I work now. I'm not really so much into UFOs anymore. I'm trying to figure out, how does reality work? How does it manifest? How does consciousness fit in? And that sort of thing. So I've gone from my UFO sighting to this and that. I just kept getting dragged into these things. And it's like, that's the next thing I think where I have to go is this idea of, death, what happens at death, and, consciousness is the key thing, which turned out to be right. It came with absolute certainty in 2012. Nothing has turned out to be wrong. It's become more and more confirmed as we go along that I was right, that thing that I got in 2012 was right. And I think it's the same thing. So I try to encourage, we try to help other people to publish their books. I always say to experiencers, say, did you write this story down? And they go, no. I said, I think you should write it down for your kids, for your grandkids, because now you can do self-publishing where you can do the book and it'll cost you $5 and $5 to ship it. And you have one book and you put it on a shelf. You don't have to sell the book. They'll print the thing. And for your kids to see what the thing was, because your kids may not acknowledge you now. They may not. My son's not interested at all. But 500 years from now, somebody's grandkid will say, "Hey, that was my grandfather. That was my grandmother." And it's like we're living at the time of Jesus, at the time of the signing of the Constitution. We're in the middle of this thing. We don't realize how big this story is and how important it is for us to do what we can and record what's happened to us and pass it on to other people, because lots of people are still in the closet. And I say you got to get them out of the closet, because closets are for clothes, and get them out and at least get them to write it down for themselves, because the process that once you talk about it, once you write it down, the fear starts to fade away and you start to get patterns, and it starts to come together, and you start realizing what's actually going on. As long as you're hiding, as long as you're not doing anything and just playing that fear thing, you end up committing suicide or whatever. It's like, so it's up to us to try to move the ball along, and all we can do is do the best job we can. That when we leave the world, we say, I did the best I could. I didn't do the greatest job, but I did the best I could. And that's all you're expected. Yeah, have some fun and to do it. And that we have this important role. If we realize that this is the biggest story, I said, with paranormal and UFO, we live the Super Bowl every day, the biggest story that will ever come down the pike. And we're sitting in the middle of this story.
So Grant, can I, God, I've got so many notes, like 2 or 3 more shows worth of notes beside me here, but can you tell our viewers, who probably already know, best way to get hold of you, and also what's coming up for you? We already have 2 shows here, so but can you tell our viewers what's up and how can they reach you?
Okay, my website, we have a website. I took down the presidential one. It's being archived somewhere, but I took that one down, and I have It's All Connected Publishing. And I never knew. I stole that from some girl. It was like, it's all one word. It's all connected. And I was thinking, like, this is a weird. And then I suddenly realized, oh, it's all connected. I get the joke. And so now it's All Connected Publishing, and that's where we try to help people to get their story and try to. We used to be able to do it for free, but now my assistant who does the editing can't really time job, so it's harder. But I try to push people to do their book, and there's a number of them become bestseller. Like Ronan's book became a bestseller. So there's a few of them that have turned out pretty well. And I have my Presidential UFO Facebook site, which I put all my material. I've just come out with 3 books. One was on the apports and manifestations, where you get psychics and experiencers where things will disappear, reappear, falls out of the ceiling, coins. I go through physical, all the relationships between like apports and manifestations with experiencers, with physical mediums, psychics, and you see it, same thing. It's happening all across the board. It's all the same thing. It's almost what Ray Hernandez was told when he had the experience where they pulled him out of the car. They said that, you got remote viewing, you got psychic phenomena, near-death experience, and they say, and you got to quit parsing this stuff. It's all the same thing, and this wheel is spinning. It's all the same thing. Quit parsing it. And so I did the book on apports and manifestations. It's got some. It's called Weird: The Paranormal World of Apports and Manifestations.
Okay.
And there are some weird things. Some of the stuff that has appeared around experiencers and stuff that's happened. It's just, and the stuff they did to me. I mean, one PowerPoint, but it's hard to explain in a couple seconds, but they did to me in a PowerPoint. I was floored. I could not believe what they did to my PowerPoint as I'm presenting in Laughlin. And then I did a book, the Sky Pilots, where I had that first woman in 2013 tell me the story about consciousness, about using consciousness, that the craft is alive. You put your hand on a panel, you become one with the craft. The craft is alive, and whatever you think is what the craft does. You become one with the craft, and whatever you think in your head, you imagine where you want to go, and you are there instantaneously. And it's that. So I did that book, and then I did a book called The Ride, which is based on this. It's a bunch of articles, but it's based on what the heck's this guy's name? I never remember the guy's name. It was called The Ride. It's a comedy thing, and I'm sure this guy had to be an experience. He talks about. He says, you go into an amusement park and you get on the ride, and it's so real. You think it's actually real. And you go up and down, around and around. There's lights and there's noise, and then you get to the end, and then you get off, and then you know what we do to those people? We kill them. And then the people say, hey, I got a lot of money invested in this ride. What do you mean it's what do you mean it's not real? And these people have been on the ride numerous times. And they say, hey, I don't think this is real. And it's this idea that life is like this ride. It goes up and it goes down. You have these things. In the end, when you get off, you realize it's just a ride. And that's what the Newton thing was. When you die, you're going to suddenly realize all the world's a stage, and all the men and women are but actors. We have our entrances and exits, and each man plays many roles. You're going to go, oh, Oh, it's just a ride. It was just a thing, and we're gonna do it again. We assume we're the actor on the stage. We are not the actor on the stage. We are the person watching the actor on the stage. Almost like Whitley Strieber, if you've heard the story. I keep telling them, I said, Whitley, that's the most amazing thing I've ever heard. When Anne came back after she died, she said, Whitley, I'm no longer Anne, but I'll always be Anne to you. So she played the role of Anne for his wife, and now she's gone and she's playing a different role. I'm gone now, I'm on every role, but I'll always be Anne to you. And that's that idea
lovely.
that we realize, is this just a ride? We're coming in here and we're doing something, either having fun or learning something or whatever we're doing. And we go in and out, and the other people come in, and we keep making the mistake of believing that we are the ego. The ego says, no, this is real. I'm a real person. I mean, there's nothing outside of me. And that's the mistake we made. And that's when you get into that separation. There's me and there's you. No, there's just a ride, and everybody comes on the ride, and we're all the one. We're all connected above that physical universe. When we connect together, we realize we're all one. And that's what you get with psychedelic experiences with Sting, the famous musician, where they gave him the big, huge thing to drink. And he said, oh, he just like told them, get rid of me. I'm just wiped out. And he said, I saw the realize everything was alive, conscious, and one. And I looked in a crack and I saw this little plant coming up, and I said, that's my brother. And then he spent his whole life now trying to save the rainforest, spending all his money to save the rainforest. And that's the whole thing. When you realize you are one with everything, that whatever you do will impact the world. What you take away, so you put in as much as you can, take out as little as you can. Whereas we're doing the opposite. We're saying, take out as much as you can, don't pay as little tax as you can, take out as much as you can, put back in as little as you can, pay as little tax as you can. We got it completely backwards.
Yeah.
The idea is to make the world a better place than it was when you came in. And if 8 billion people all make the world a better place, where's the world going to be? I mean, that's as simple as that. We're either taking away from the world or you're adding to the world.
Well,
Yeah,
what an
Grant.
extraordinary interview today. I hope that you'll come back. But sorry, Leslie, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just also going to thank Grant for being here.
Wow.
It was so wonderful to have you be our guest for a couple of shows here back to back. And of course, we want everybody to buy all your books. So Grant Cameron, investigative reporter, ufologist, experiencer, conduit, antenna. Let's see, bon vivant.
And thank you for what you do, because you're working with the experiencer community. You're one of the few where I say, that's what you got to do. You focus on them, forget everything else. These are the people. If there's an answer, these people have it. The experiencers have it.
They do, Grant. They do have it. I believe that. Well, bless your heart. Thank you again. Wes Roberts, is always my intrepid partner in all of these the shenanigans. And of course, I'm Leslie Mitchell Clark, and we thank you again for watching us here on Contact TV. Thank you very much. And remember, we are not alone.
Thank you, Grant. We'll see
Thank you,
again.
Grant.
We'll see you
Bye-bye now. Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for watching Contact TV.
We would like to thank our generous sponsors, Lightwork Hypnosis, UFOria and the UFOria Chronicles, Earth Mystery News, Conspiracy Culture Books, MUFON Canada, Free Experiencers, the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, and Variety Store Productions.
For guest booking information, please email Wes Roberts at producer@contacttv.ca. And don't forget to join us on Facebook and Twitter.